Welcome to Critical Hit, a Major Spoilers podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and checking us out this week, and welcome back to the 6th season of the Void Saga. Oh, I know you've been waiting patiently. I know you've been enjoying all of the other adventures that we've been playing, but now it's time to get back into Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition.
Voiding it up.
So I know so many people are waiting. Here's the thing. I know people are still like, oh, 5th edition is where it's at, yo. Get yourselves on to the 5th edition. But you know what? There's still so many people that want to see us go all the way.
Let's break out the old rules encyclopedia and do basic.
There you go. There's still people that want to see us go all the way to the top in 4E, and I think, Rodrigo,
Elf is a class, yeah.
We might be able to get to it.
Well, we'll see if you guys actually make it there.
Oh, no! I have a feeling he's trying to kill us off pretty early.
See.
Just immediately.
You know.
Yes, welcome back to 4th edition. Everybody roll initiative.
Okay.
No, don't.
Oh.
Okay.
I got a rock.
Not yet. All right. So I hope everybody had a good summer. Let's get back into this. So we are if you guys will allow me some time to set the scene. Our story here is going to pick up in the Astral Sea. Now, certainly listeners and some of the characters have been to the Astral Sea before. Imagine a truly endless, sort of inky, black, indigo ocean, expanding in every direction, literally forever. It is not made of water. It is made of some other substance. It is the Astral Sea. The water, or whatever substance this is, the sea, reflects the stars from the vault above, giving the waves this sort of shimmering quality. Now, this vault of stars is representative of the very islands of the Astral Sea. Each individual island is represented as a star in the heavens, and that is in fact sort of what the people in the natural world or prime material plane are seeing when they look up. They are seeing these islands in this sort of slightly off or slightly off dimension that is the Astral Sea. It's not physically on top of the real world, but it does sort of mirror itself onto it. So among these stars and or islands, the brightest ones are the cities of the gods. The Pentatheon and the Dark Council all have, each god has a city that they rule over and use as their base of operations. And these are, generally speaking, the brightest stars. Some of them are a little dimmer, as the god might prefer, and some of them are not visible at all, depending on which horrifying Lord of Secrets you are. But for now, our story is going to drive us towards Drakistan, which is the holy city of Bahamut. Drakistan is not, by now, probably not the biggest city that any of our heroes have been in. In fact, it might, if you took all of the plates of New Mawakal and put them side by side or together, it might actually be smaller than that. So for as urban as a lot of our characters have become, or the experiences they've had, certainly it doesn't hold a candle to Shalai for those that have been there. what is remarkable about Drakistan is that it's by far the largest fortress any of our heroes have ever been in. It is a nearly country-sized fortress in that sense of the word. Right up to the sea are these colossal walls of white stone. They are, bless you. They are smooth and clearly very difficult to scale. And as you follow them up from the sea, you can see, portholes and slits and turrets and other locations that probably house anything from archers to heavy artillery to wizards and priests who can wield their magic outward to defend the city. It is a fortress that is meant to be absolutely impenetrable in that it is a kind of a platonic ideal of what fortresses in the natural world and in other places are supposed to be. Normally, Drakistan would be bustling with normal activity, people walking the streets, gathering in its taverns and barracks, running military drills and things like that. But not today. Today, its biggest square, right at the center of the city, has been cleared out. And instead, there is a very solemn gathering there, and it is an enormous gathering. It really seems like every citizen of this city, plus a few more, have gathered here at the square. It is shoulder to shoulder. People are standing on rooftops, balconies, makeshift bleachers and things like that, just trying to create enough space for everybody to gather here. It is a sea of people and people of various races, humans, dwarves, half orcs, etc. You can see which ones are priests of Bahamut by their white cloaks with silver accents, and they vary greatly. It's not like a straight up uniform, but it's clearly a badge of some kind to wear this. Everybody who is not a priest is wearing a gray cloak, and in fact, sort of up in that balcony over there are our heroes all wearing their gray cloaks. We'll get to them here in a bit. Right at the center of all of this is Bahamut, an enormous dragon, although probably a little bit more humanoid than other dragons that the group might have encountered, in that he doesn't necessarily have like a super like cat physique with scales. He's more like a big armored dragon man kind of thing. Colossal feathered wings, made out of, or his scales and armor are made out of glistening white metal, and it lies there pretty much motionless, and has these like enormous orbs for eyes that really seem to be looking at you, our heroes. And it might really be a trick because they're so big and glossy, and maybe everybody sees themselves reflected in them, but definitely as Bahamut lies there, it really, really seems like he's looking at you. The the ceremony is not very long, and in fact, very little is said. Before long, it is clear that as dusk arrives, there are just things floating into the air from where Bahamut is, and pretty soon it's clear that it appears to be maybe ash, as basically little points of Bahamut begin to float up into the air, and soon the entirety of his figure is covered or has fallen apart into a dark gray ashy substance and begins to float into the air, not with any sort of like glowing or display of godly power, but really in a very kind of weirdly physical, mechanical way. He just kind of withers away very quickly, and eventually there's just a pillar of ash that floats up into the air. It is at this stage that a priest, someone wearing a white and silver robe next to our heroes, leans into the group and says, "We should go," and begins making her way down from the balcony where they are into a building and into a set of tunnels. As she does so, she removes her hood. You guys recognize her as the person who brought you here. Her name is Sarza. She is pale and kind of has this look like she hasn't slept in 4 days, but you guys are starting to realize maybe that's just what she looks like. It's not that she's not getting enough sleep, or maybe she never gets enough sleep, but she always looks like this. She is not currently armed or armored, although plenty of priests were. She apparently did not decide to wear her regalia. Again, she is pale. She's a human. Has dark hair, which she is keeping back in a bun right now. Who follows immediately after her?
Sakar follows immediately after her.
Okay. So as Sakar removes his hood, why don't you give us a description?
All right. Sakar is approximately 6.5 feet tall, rather large, buff gentleman. Presuming that he hasn't, had a beard overgrowth that I've forgotten about, he has kind of brownish skin, black hair, massive, beautiful sideburns of a Mike Nesmith variety. Let's see. Would this be a situation where he would be armored or unarmored, or is that up to me?
That is up to you, but there seemed to be no... the important thing were the cloaks. There was no indication that you needed to not be armed or armored.
Okay. So unarmored at this point in time. And probably if the cloak is open enough, you can see that he carries a couple of large swords at his hips and is basically looking very fightery fighter guy. Is this your first episode? Totally just a normal fightery fighter guy. That's all.
Normal human fighter.
Normal human fighter guy. Nothing strange going on here.
All right. Who follows after Sakar?
I guess I will.
Okay.
So Orb Rivendorn is an Eladrin of average height, I suppose. He's very thin, just right at 100 pounds. He has blonde hair and blue-green eyes, depending on which angle that you are looking at. And he is dressed, of course, in his immaculate blue silk robes with intricate details and little scroll work, little details all around the fabric. Of course, he always looks fantastic wherever he goes. and many people might question what his powers might be. If they would notice a sword at his side, they might think that he is some kind of a warrior, but he is in fact a wizard.
Okay. Would you like to describe his weapon?
The weapon, well, it has its own kind of thing. Of course, when it's in the hilt, you really can't see much of it. When it's in its, I think, what is it called?
Scabbard.
The scabbard. But the hilt of the sword looks kind of gnarly, and as it goes up to the pommel, you notice what looks like a giant closed eye on the end of that sword.
I believe it's at the crossguard.
Oh, okay.
The eye.
Yeah, that's where it is.
Crossguard. Yes, sword terms.
Swordish stuff.
The hilt of the sword and the sheath of the sword, different items of the thing.
Quite you.
Okay.
I'm just
Wearing in solemn ceremony.
Right.
All right. So who follows after Orem?
Randus, after a second hesitation, falls in line and follows the rest. He's a little bit shorter, somewhat stocky, human, maybe person. For the occasion, his hair's slicked back, but has a couple unruly tufts sticking out, and recently clean-shaven, giving him kind of a baby face-ish appearance. He has a big metal arm, and otherwise, just wearing the gray robes and plain clothes underneath.
You say a big metal arm, like, are we talking like roughly humanoid proportioned arm, or?
Yeah, probably humanoid, a little larger than humanoid, probably, as if it could be, a mailed arm, but it's a prosthetic, big, metal, shiny arm.
Okay, so like just a slightly oversized arm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any obvious weapons?
Nope.
Okay. Other than a big arm.
All
Okay.
of Randus'
Can
weapons
do
are
in
not
case.
obvious.
All right. Who follows Randus?
I'll go. Excuse me. Kettle step forward. Ket is a half elf, just under 6 foot tall, brown hair, goatee. Right now, he's just going to wear the cloak to guard against everything, but he does have a large twig that he's using as what looks like a walking stick.
Okay. And then who follows Ket?
Basically kind of appearing out of the shadows, which seem to cling around her a bit, is Little Sparkle, or Maya Little New Roost, depending on who she's talking to. She is wearing the cloak, concealing leather armor underneath. The little bit of the black leather shows through. She is not obviously armed, though does stand out a bit as she is a kenku. So she's got some black feathers poking out from the head of the cloak, and then a long green beak and blue eyes that are looking nervously around everywhere.
Okay. So you guys follow your handler, for lack of a better word, at least we've been here. And she leads you down down several corridors. Eventually, you find yourselves at basically a makeshift bay. It is a place where the Astral Sea sort of flows into this area with multiple ships, and this area is very large. It's got several very large, imposing ships, and I should point out that astral ships are really more reminiscent of buildings than they are of sort of your galley type boats. Definitely, these guys don't look like the Proud Baroness. They tend to be kind of blocky and angular. If it like ones that are built for cargo are essentially look like flipped over trapezoidal prisms. Ones that are built for speed are sort of pointy at the front and lean. And they have these sort of circular assemblies that make contact with the Astral Sea at either side of them, and that's how they propel themselves forward. She leads you to a ship that you had not seen around here before, and in fact has a very unusual look to it. It is definitely not the largest ship here, but it is a good size. But unlike the other ones, it kind of has a two-pronged front. That is to say, rather than coming to a point or to a flat edge, it kind of tapers off into these two rectangular prongs that head forward. If you look at the space in between them, it has a strange mechanical assembly in between the two. The ship has a gangplank lowered, and it appears that the crew is in the last moments of preparing to leave. And she basically walks up to the gangplank and motions for you all to get on the ship.
Where are we going?
We are going to a different base. We should not stay in the city.
Why?
Because it's about to be attacked.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll get on the ship, but I hope you fill us in.
I will.
Step aboard.
Yeah.
Does this ship have a name?
Did you say that out loud?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. As you head up and you ask if the ship has a name, you see a dwarf at the very top of the gangplank. He is wearing a leather coat and has a silvery tiara around his forehead, basically. It's kind of like a circlet. He has blonde hair and beard, and has a big beard, and sort of it's like it's split into two at the bottom, and kind of turns into two braids as it tapers down from his chin. And as Orem goes up and asks that, the dwarf says, "Indeed it does. Welcome to the Dawn's Arena. I am Captain Otto Gemhand. Please, 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 hurry up."
Okay.
Oh, okay.
We
Nice to meet
hurry.
you.
Why were we brought here just to evacuate?
Well, you were brought here to bear witness. Sarsa says as the gangplank is brought up after she gets on.
I'm sorry, where are we?
This is Drakistan, Bahamut's holy city. You're in the Astral Sea.
Okay. Are you taking us back to our people? Or to my people?
Not at this stage, no.
What do the gods need us to bail them out of this time?
Oh. I'm afraid it might be past that point at this stage. So the ship starts moving as you guys are talking. And you make it out of that little bay pretty fast and just kind of start heading out into the sea. When the locks activate and make contact, they kind of create this wake that is really bright and luminous. Essentially, this ship creates this kind of like glittering rainbow waves as it goes through the sea, which is all the more striking because it's pretty much either black or indigo. So it like kind of creates this like shimmering pastel wake as it moves.
Okay, I think I'm not supposed to be here.
Yes, well, I was instructed to get Orem Rivendorn, Randus Duthane, Ket Hazard, and their companions. So
You left a bunch of them.
Did I?
Well, we were on a mission, and we had allies back at the Salamander Coil base. And then we were going to rendezvous with him, but now we're in the Astral Sea. Was that Bahamut at the funeral? Are you telling me that we just watched a god die?
Yes, indeed, you did just watch a god die.
Which god?
Bahamut.
So what killed him?
She looks over at sort of Orem, Ket, and Randus.
I didn't do anything. How were we responsible?
Oh, I was insinuating that you were responsible. I'm saying you saw what killed him.
Oh.
So what did it?
During the events of the Celestial Crusade, Bahamut engaged in combat with dark and powerful entity, and although he managed to live for quite some time after that, eventually he succumbed to his wounds.
I didn't witness that. She hit us first.
That is correct. How did you make it out of that?
Luck? Knowing the right people?
That makes more sense. She walks over to a barrel that's on the deck, like a perfectly normal barrel, and sort of has like a half sit against it, just kind of puts her butt up against it and leans her weight into it. What else?
Well, what do you want us to do?
What exactly you are to do is up to you. But your involvement, I believe, is going to soon be requested by multiple parties.
Is there going to be some kind of divine power struggle now?
Oh, almost certainly. You hear...
Is that why we were...
Oh, go ahead.
Is that why the city was being attacked?
Well, it's about to be attacked. And she points towards the horizon, and you guys see what at first is... It's hard to tell what exactly it is, but you basically see this, like, the horizon is lit up. And definitely for those of you that aren't used to astral ships, you might not put it together immediately, but eventually you realize that the horizon just has a huge line of ships that are heading towards Drakistan. And I mean, this is like a massive, massive fleet.
What? Whose fleet is that?
Officially, no one's, but we understand it to be working for Asmodeus, the god of tyranny.
She looks at Ket. So
I think everybody looks at Ket.
Yeah.
Indeed, everyone looks at Ket.
Even Randus? Randus is
side-eye.
usually forgiving of my antics. What?
So, are you gonna get called in on this?
I'm sorry. What?
Probably
Oh,
not.
him. Sorry.
Yeah.
Reasonably certain that my association with him doesn't have anything to do with this.
Well, that might not be entirely accurate. Indeed, Bahamut has accrued much power since the Celestial Crusade because he did not expend very many resources during the Celestial Crusade.
You mean Asmodeus?
Yes.
That is not entirely my fault.
I'm not saying it's your fault. I mean, it takes weeks for a war crimes panel to really determine that sort of thing. So I'm not here to judge you.
I'm sorry, I am so out of my league here.
Yeah, you kind of get used to it.
Yeah.
No, I really don't think so. I mean, I've been hearing you guys talk about killing gods and fighting gods and making deals with gods, but I think I got scooped up because of proximity here, and I just do not know what at all I'm going to bring to the table on this, as don't understand. I don't even know your gods.
Did you or did you not just help save the world?
I guess I did, but that doesn't.
Welcome to the team.
Or a number of worlds.
In the final analysis, a god is no different than any other creature. It's simply a matter of scale.
That is a very positive way of looking at it. Indeed, you did just see a god die. In any case, it's entirely possible that this all can be resolved without any deicide or further deicide, I suppose.
That'd be
And
nice.
how might that resolution come about?
I don't exactly know. So I guess I should start from what my position is.
Yes, please.
I am a priest of Bahamut, and most people focus on Bahamut's martial nature, his drive for justice. But he had many other portfolios, and one of them was a mild ability for, or a mild propensity for oracles. Bahamut has made a handful of predictions, and so far they have proven to be correct. For example, where we would find you, and that Drakistan would be attacked immediately following his death. I have in my possession a couple of other such proclamations, and although I feel that even if I was not involved, they would still come to pass, I have been charged with making sure to facilitate them, as it were.
Hmm.
How did Asmodeus know when Bahamut was going to die?
We
Asmodeus
do.
knows a little thing.
Yes. We are not certain, but he more than likely has moles in our organization.
So what are these prophecies?
Well, aside from the attack on Drakistan, we know that soon the Treaty of Worms will begin falling apart because enough of the signatories are no longer alive or extant in the same way that they were when it was signed.
Also not my fault.
You're not helping.
This will cause several things to happen. For one, time will slowly begin to unravel. Also, the slumbering gods, if they are hale enough, will begin to awaken, or at least the ones that are hale enough will begin to awaken. And that is assuming that no consensus is met by the remaining gods. Essentially, they have some amount of time to agree on a new treaty, amending the Treaty of Worms, and thus preventing any of this from happening. Bahamut also prophesies that will not work. They are not going to come to a decision.
So how do we keep time from unraveling?
Well, time will begin to unravel very slowly. I know that doesn't make a lot of sense, but due to the nature of the way that time works in relativity, we should not feel any effects from that. Even if the Treaty of Worms begins to unravel, chances are there won't be any. It won't be like it won't be a sudden snap and everything will be out of whack. Rather, there will probably be small localized phenomena at first, then large localized phenomena, and then eventually all relative time will dissociate.
And so we need to stop time from unraveling, keep Asmodeus from gaining more control, saving the world.
In a sense, we are counting on you being invited to the negotiation, not as negotiators, but as spectators.
Ah, okay.
Certainly from there, it's something that you can gauge and figure out based on what actually ends up happening. You guys see some like explosions off in the distance.
So are your people going to be able to handle that?
That was not in the prophecy. Drakistan is the greatest fortress ever, so it's very likely. It's also possible that Asmodeus has new magics and technologies that we were not counting on. So very likely that could swing in that direction. Unfortunately, that is no longer my concern. Whether Drakistan survives or not is now up to the priests and the standing army of the city.
So where are we headed?
We are headed to Rutile Island. It is a dim star and the best base of operations that we could secure. It is close enough to be able to monitor things, but also secluded enough to allow us to not call attention to ourselves as we work.
Who's going to meet us there?
Well, we have a small group of people working there, but no one specific. What were you hoping for?
I'm not sure.
Is there some way I
one
can
of the
send messages back to my plane? I just things left in a very dramatic way, and I want to make sure that my people are okay.
We might be able to figure something out.
Okay.
You are actually accompanied by very puissant spellcasters, so...
Yeah, I honestly just wasn't sure how that worked in terms of being in the Astral Sea.
Well, it is difficult.
You ask
but I'm
Brandis
sure we
to
can
solve
figure
a
it out.
problem and he solves it. That's how we figured everything else out here.
As plans go, we've had worse.
So the Treaty of Worms, do you have a copy of it on the ship?
Yes.
All right.
And for those of us who aren't fully versed in godly treaties, who are the signatories?
5 gods of the Pentheon and the 5 of the Dark Council. That is Bahamut, Corellon, Melora, Arathis, and the Raven Queen. And then Asmodeus, Gromish, Tiamat, Lolth, and Vecna.
And we know that Bahamut is no longer.
Correct. And the Raven Queen has been either transformed or supplanted into a different entity.
Or looks at
little
Jet.
column A, little column B.
So 2 of the 5 of the Pentathian.
One of them's no more. The other one is something
no less.
So is she not beholden to the treaty?
Apparently not, but also she doesn't benefit from it either. So she is essentially outside of it now. And that is one of the concerns. As she has become something else, we believe her personality has changed very drastically. So there's a lot of talk that she is in fact in league with Asmodeus.
Mm.
And when was the last time anyone saw her?
She has appeared. She openly rules Endgate. So our people there have seen her. She goes by the Obsidian Huntress now. Perhaps most distressingly is that she retains control over her former portfolio. So you can imagine how a deity that's possibly no longer as concerned with the purity of death, having access to every dead person, can become a big issue.
Yeah, that seems terrible.
I
Can we contact
strongly recommend that you do not die.
I try to avoid that in general.
Mm.
What were you saying, Kat?
Are we able to contact her?
I suppose we could.
And had Bahamut reached out to the rest of the Pentathion before this
In what way?
to let them know of his predictions, to let them know of his untimely demise?
All I know is what I have been given as a task. I do not know if he had any communication with anyone else. Bahamut is not always seen as a planner or a schemer, but I would be very surprised if he didn't have other irons in the fire.
All right.
Do you know if he...
Asmodeus is working with any of the rest of the Dark Council?
I'm not sure. I know that there's sort of a separate how do I want to phrase it? There is a separate agreement between the members of the Dark Council, so he might be able to compel their help even if they did not want to help him. Certainly, that is another point against any continuation of the Treaty of Worms. It is well known that, for example,
how do you keep... Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just saying, without a new treaty, how do you keep the world from falling apart?
Oh, it's not that the world would fall apart; it's that time would unravel.
Okay, so how do you... I guess I was being more metaphorical. Time unraveling and the old gods from waking up.
Without a treaty, how do you prevent that from happening? You can't. It will happen unless another treaty with enough godly power is reached.
But you said Bahamut already foresaw that wouldn't happen.
He foresaw that this council of gods would in fact not be able to come to an agreement. Not that no council of gods would ever be able to come to an agreement.
So is there like a list of other gods that would qualify?
Potentially. We would have to see who wakes up.
What do you mean who wakes up?
The sleeping gods, those that are hale enough, may awaken.
Oh,
which would change
so
the balance.
I'm sorry.
of
What
power.
are these sleeping gods? I assumed that they were terrible things that we wouldn't want to be dealing with.
Only some of them. Back before time was structured, during a period that we call time immemorial, there were many gods, not just the 10. And they had their own followers, lands. They had their own schemes and powers and creations. But there was a great war which culminated in a ceasefire. That ceasefire is the Treaty of Worms. And during the war, the majority of the gods were either injured or outright killed, and only 10 of them were powerful enough to bind time and space, as it were, into the treaty. So those 10 are the ones that I mentioned, 5 in the Pentatheon, 5 in the Dark Council. All the other ones, as part of their either surrender or armistice, or however you want to look at it, retreated into shadow, as it were, and have been slumbering and healing ever since. Some of them may be fully healed by now. Some of them may be partially healed, but able to take part in whatever happens next.
Do you know how many gods we need, or how much godly power we need to prevent time from going screwy?
I do not. It would have to be something where we would just have to get as much on one side as possible. If there is enough power on one side, it doesn't matter what everybody else wants to do. Indeed, that's what happened back all those eons ago. If there is enough power to the signatures, it will bind the cosmos.
So Bahamut sent you for us.
Mm-hmm.
Did he leave anything for us? A message or anything at all?
I mean, he left everything that I've told you about.
Okay.
He left a base of operations and a staff.
Okay.
And the ship.
Okay.
So you said we'd be invited to the negotiations. With who?
You mean who would invite you?
Yeah.
I am not sure. But he foresaw that your group would be invited.
Seems obvious.
That you would be invited?
I'm sorry, I don't usually get a lot of invitations to divine gatherings.
If we're to be invited, it seems obvious that our only connection
is Asmodeus.
There's also the Obsidian Huntress,
who might be allied with Asmodeus.
Sending us as his emissary.
That could be it too.
That is unlikely. Bahamut
I don't think.
No longer has a say here.
Yeah, that was going to be my point. Dead people don't usually get to negotiate.
There's also the fact that some of us have managed to save the gods before. So it might just be an extended courtesy.
Indeed. The Treaty of Worms is a complex and powerful tangle of bureaucracies. So it's entirely possible that this will happen without anybody essentially issuing an invitation. Just because you've had interactions or particular interactions with the gods, you might just be invited. But we'll have to see how that manifests. I don't know how it will manifest.
And how long until this meeting?
It will be soon, but I don't know exactly when it will happen.
Okay.
I mean, this was a long time ago, but do you have any intelligence on who these other gods are, what they might want, which ones might have survived, where we could find them, or is the plan just go to this meeting and see what shakes out?
Well, that is certainly the immediate plan. We have intelligence on hundreds of slumbering gods, but we are not sure who among them will actually awaken. So spending a lot of time tracking down information on them. And we have a staff, we have people working on this, but
it could be a waste of resources.
Absolutely. And right now, the 5 of you are our greatest assets. So the way in which you all choose to manage your time is actually the most impactful thing to this mission.
All right. Well, I mean, you know these gods. You've negotiated with them before. Do you have a strategy?
Not yet. I need to read the treaty again.
This is certainly a lot to take in. You may want to spend some time meditating on it. I can certainly supply you with a copy of the treaty. We have one on board, but once we get to Rutile Island, you can each have access to one.
Excuse me, how long before we get there?
Should be only a couple days.
All right. Orem, Randus, shall we start poring over the treaty?
Sure.
I suppose.
All right.
Anything I can do?
What do you know about bureaucracy?
A lot, actually.
Oh, good.
All right.
All right, you guys gonna sit around and look through paperwork?
Mm-hmm.
I suppose.
All right. Raise your hand if you have good bureaucracy.
I don't think my stats have a bureaucracy check on it.
I'll tell you what. Raise your hand if you have good diplomacy.
That would be Little Sparkle.
High.
Very, very high diplomacy.
I'm going to half raise one hand.
Mine's at 16, so it's not super high.
Yeah, mine's relatively crap.
Okay, so those of you that have a diplomacy, I'm going to say below 17.
Yeah.
Very quickly find yourselves like turned upside down by this document.
Orem flips a table and walks out of the room.
Little Sparkle actually settles down. It's like, oh, phew. This is not that much more complicated than coil bureaucracy. All right. I think I can handle this.
Yeah, it's actually weirdly familiar in that, like, you immediately recognize the clauses that are supposed to throw people off.
Nice.
Like, this is here to throw people away from this other thing that I'm trying to do over here. Oh, but somebody else caught it, and there's this like counter signature. It's just it's actually classic bureaucracy.
Perhaps the template for bureaucracy.
Perhaps. So as Orem frustrates out, and did I hear Randus as well?
Yeah.
The captain. Oh, go ahead.
I mostly need Randus to study the parts about keeping time in check.
Yeah,
You're
definitely
with that.
You're definitely gonna have to write him some notes. Basically, you're gonna have to work up a digest for Randus.
In this research session, are we mostly left to ourselves?
Yep.
So who currently has the thing?
Oh, Orem does.
Orem.
It's in his handy haversack. But he's not in the room, so.
We're talking about the starfish.
Yep.
Yes. What are our thoughts on that?
Weapon of last resort.
Yeah.
I believe the largest question is going to be,
Who?
Exactly.
Quorum pops his head back into the room. I could think of someone right now.
But bear in mind that with more possibly awakening, we have no
we
way
might
of
wind up
knowing.
with worse choices.
It's true.
Sometimes it is better to deal with the literal devil you know.
So is he a
how
literal
I'm here.
devil or a god of devils?
Oh. Potato, tomato, I suppose.
So, just out of curiosity,
Mm-hmm.
Sarsa had mentioned that we need to gather great power.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's not, power like a machine, but power like an influence and power of a god. This thing, he says, shaking his handy haversack, this thing kills gods and supposedly transfers the power to...
The thing.
Yes. Do you think that he knew that this was coming and this was his plot all along to try to
Guaranteed.
become the most powerful to control time?
100%.
Yeah.
I agree.
I wouldn't put it past him.
The question then is, would there be a way to transfer that power to not him?
Do you want to experiment?
That's a question.
Well, you and Randus can figure that out.
We might be able to. What do you say, Randus? You want to poke a spongy starfish?
I would kind of rather get rid of that thing, if possible.
I think that experimenting with it would be extraordinarily dangerous.
I also think getting rid of it would be extraordinarily dangerous.
I also
That's the
think that
issue.
the thing that chatters the sky knows that we're going to poke around with it.
I suppose.
I'm gonna go do some tests.
I guess
Okay.
I would study that before you test anything.
I call out for Otto. Otto, Captain Otto,
Yes.
do you have any research assistants aboard this vessel?
Oh, no, unfortunately, all we have is the crew. Once we get to your island, you should have plenty of research assistants, although I can ask some of our crew members to help you if it's something simple. They're not magicians or scientists.
Oh, yeah, no, I don't think they would be of any use. Unless any of them are willing to die. I mean...
Well, although they are willing to die for this mission, you and I will have words if you kill any of my crew.
Okay, well then I guess we'll just wait till till we get to the island. Norm kind of laughs back. Ha ha ha.
Yeah, I was going to suggest waiting until we're not floating in the Astral Sea to conduct any possibly dangerous experiments.
Yeah, they did them here last time.
Yeah, just because you did it in the past and it didn't get you killed doesn't mean you should do it again in the future.
But it's the present.
You know
For
what I
the
mean.
time being.
Not for long.
I think that's probably a good place to stop this week. Thanks so much for checking us out. Thank you for sticking around and sticking with us. I think we're going into our 8th year of this show right now. 8 years of this game. Of the entire Critical Hit podcast. 8 years. So it's been a lot of fun. And we'll have to see what happens next time on Critical Hit. Oh boy. I think the title of this season is already rearing its ugly head and poking us from behind.
Mm-hmm.
Or is it?
Or is it? I don't know. We'll have to find out next time on Critical Hit. Until then, a podcast at majorspoilers.com. If you have any questions, if you enjoy this show and you want to see it continue, then you need to head to patreon.com/major spoilers. I'm going to see about sharing some show notes that I've taken for this episode, and you might be able to find that there, as well as the character sheets. We will be rolling those out over the next couple of weeks, so if you want to see what our current builds are as this season gets underway, the place you can find it is patreon.com/major spoilers. So until next time, for Randus and Ket and Orem and Little Sparkle and Sakar, and of course the ship captain Otto Jim Hand and Sarsa and the poor Bahamut, here's hoping all of your dice rolls are critical hits.
This podcast is copyright 2018 by Major Spoilers Entertainment, LLC.